Alright, welcome to episode 3 of my Cosmonaut developer commentary. In this episode I'll be talking over the chapter Liberation, which was initially made in May of 2018 and done up in November of 2018, similar to the last chapter. And I'll be talking over all the changes that I made from NostalgiaVille Cosmonaut and how I kind of padded out the map more and added more content to it. And yeah, so let's get started. So immediately I wanted to get rid of the start of the map from NostalgiaVille Cosmonaut because it was fairly boring and you went straight into the train yard. And I always wanted to make an underground kind of, like at the start of episode 1 or near the start, when you're in the cartel. So I wanted to make that. So going into this first room, or this first area, here's another teaching mechanic, because I'm still teaching things here. And this is one for the hopper mines. This is to teach you how, how they work and how dangerous they are. Okay, so there's quite a lot of things that went on there. There was the two citizens coming out of the door. Now this room is very carefully designed. So I wanted the player to watch this. I wanted the player to stop. I didn't want the player pushing forward and missing this. I wanted it to be kind of a funny set sequence. So I have drawn as much attention to them as possible. So I had them talking. It was just random lines that I just kind of picked at random. But the fire the light is so different to anything else around, it really draws attention. I've done that a lot in this map. I've used the fire a lot, so I'll say it now so I don't have to keep saying it, but anytime you see the fire, it's usually to kind of highlight something or, draw the player's attention to something that I want them to see. I've made it so that the player can't just run straight forward. I've put this fence here, and the way out of this room is actually this vent here. So I've been blocking up the way to go, basically, as I spoke about a bit last episode and I think the episode before, and I'll probably be speaking about it every episode. But putting props down can stop the player from pushing forward, and I had to do it quite a lot here because there were some players who just went immediately to the vent, so I even had to put a wooden board over the door. I also did it at this side, but that was more to stop the player from seeing these hopper mines here immediately. I wanted them to come in. I didn't want them to look over here. I wanted them to be looking over there. So that, these pallets and the crates actually really, really helped. And then got to break all that and crawl through the vent, which again slows the player down. And this chapter's Liberation. I called it Liberation because I was inspired by LiberationVille, which was the first Ville I covered on this channel. And it was kind of the Ville that got me into the community, and, I owe a lot to LiberationVille, so I kind of wanted to honour it and pay tribute to it by making a map called Liberation where you had to liberate citizens. And I also needed some way of changing this map from being... Because this map used to be the final boss fight, or the final big battle at the end of NostalgiaVille Cosmonaut. I'll touch on that later. But I wanted it just to be kind of the end of Act 1 of Cosmonaut. So there were measures I took to change it. So we have here the hopper mines. Usually hopper mines are seen in environments where you have the gravity gun where you can pick them up and throw them. But here, because you don't have the gravity gun, the player is very vulnerable. They're very, they're more at risk. So I think that's good, and I always wanted kind of a section where the player has to kind of be careful where they go. So I guess I can, Yeah, I don't think I could fit through there deliberately, so I made it so that you had to jump on the boxes, jump onto this the truck and jump over it, and then you're met with more, you know, more of them just carving you a path. And I kind of tried to leave enough room where the player can go back if they wish and hide. But obviously, the noise is very irritating. But this guy's the first guy with the SMG, which I'm not a fan of this gun, but I thought I'd include it just so it's like the normal progression. He was at a distance, so he was over here. Oh, there's another guy. Yeah, he was over here while we were over there. It's not as if he ran up to us. To touch on something from last episode, I said the combat was to be fun and easy. At this point, we're slowly making it slightly harder. So it's still at this point, it's just like 1 or 2 cops. So we'll walk into this room. Again, he's up there. We're down here, he can't really touch us, but after this, the battles with the Metro Cops will become a lot harder. And this area was just designed so it, you know, there used to be a staircase down here, but I wanted the player not to be able just to run up towards that Metro Cop, so I did move the staircase around here, and now you can walk up like that. I don't know why the rocket's up there. I think I wanted to keep touching upon the fact that that's where you're going. You're going to the rocket. Also, I made the skybox in that map night for, you know, taking the image. So you can kind of get a sense of what it's like outside. So these image, you know, the monitors with the rocket and the shuttle, the skybox changes to what it should be outside. Obviously, I've just taken images of the map with different, you know, different skyboxes. Right. Next room. I had a bit of a problem where I wanted to alert the player to the fact that there were turrets, but I didn't have any way of doing it. So the obvious thing to do was to have a zombie walk out and be killed, but I didn't want to include any zombies in this mod, or any normal zombies. That's why there was like 1 level with zombies and that's it. So I thought, well, how can I do this? How can I tell the player that there's turrets there so the player doesn't take damage? And, you know, that would be unfair if the player took damage before they knew to avoid it. So you should always be telling the player there's something there. So all I did was I added a scream from an ambient generic and put a body. Now that, you know, ragdoll's been there from the start of the, you know, as soon as we started, he's just there. But I just had them just fire, just to, you know, let them know, so it kind of makes sense. Obviously that corpse looks like it's been long dead. And then we get to this turret section, which I quite like. Again, I'll just highlight the fire that I've used to light the place up. There's also one over there. And with this, I've actually given the player the option to walk behind the truck. It gives them a safe option. But what I noticed when I first made it is that the turrets, these ground turrets, actually have a drop-off for the kind of length they can shoot. And the drop-off is about here. So where I am now, if I go here, they're shooting at me legitimately there. Like, they can genuinely see me. But if I'm over here, they will not legitimately shoot. So what I've done is I've placed a trigger that when the player is touching the trigger, they will fire randomly. I'll save the game just in case this goes horribly wrong. There we go. Now they'll hit 1 or 2 shots, yeah. but the reason why they're not very accurate is because they're not firing at me. I've just said, when the player's in the trigger, just fire, randomly. But when I'm here, they hit a lot more. So yeah, I've given the option for the player to go behind. It kind of gives the illusion that you can go behind, or they can just cross here, so they can still avoid damage at this point. It's only when they get round to this room here, this is kind of a utility room for, getting more health and battery power. Just because this could be quite a difficult section where the player could potentially take a lot of damage. So now this is the point where the player has to, they can't hide anywhere. They have to make a decision. A lot of players actually run straight towards the window and try and break through, and it does work, although they can take a lot of damage. So I've made sure I've tried to make the doorway as obvious as possible by putting that light there, and then it's up to the player to run across. I also made use of hoppers to stop the player just from running up. Now there's no way to get to these turrets because I've put fences there, so I wanted the player to have to dodge past them and all that. So let's begin. This corridor, I wanted the player to still be in danger of the turrets, and I always presumed, or I kind of expect the player just to run down the corridor like that. So what I've done is I've put triggers here, where the windows are. So at least one turret will always fire to kind of give the impression it's shooting at you, even though it's not really, or it may not be able to see you. I think the trigger is here, yeah. He can't see me at the moment. But just for the kind of effect of it. And then we get to this room. Now, I want the players to think they're safe. And it's kind of a nice surprise, or not a nice surprise, when they open this door and there's a turret right there. But it's kind of fairly difficult for the player to... Or I don't want the only option for taking out this turret to be to run towards it. So that's why I added this very conveniently placed hole in the wall. It's where the player can throw a grenade and it can have an effect. I thought it was going to have no effect there. Yeah, there we go. And now we're behind the turrets. Now we're safe. So it wasn't just an easy run down this corridor, run into this room and, throw them on the floor like that. It's, there was actually that extra, layer of danger. And if you do go back, you can get a battery and whatnot. These steam pipes were just here to make the corridor a bit more exciting, because otherwise it's just a corridor, you just run down. But as previously mentioned last episode, I kind of want the player to interact. I want the player to be doing things, to be thinking about what they're doing. So here, you have a jump. That doesn't quite work if you hit it. I think it's a crouch jump, yeah. There we go. And a crouch, just a normal crouch. And these things don't take off too much damage, but they're still dangerous. And then there's a lot of downtime here. This room is very, very, very interesting. When I initially designed this room, I've made it obvious how to complete, or what the necessary stages are to complete the way out, to find the exit. That's the challenge in this room. So I've put a light there to highlight this platform here. I've put a light kind of there to show that you can go up there, and there's a door, there's stuff there. It's the center of the room, and that I put that there because you can't really see that platform up there, which is where we're trying to go. So hopefully, if the player makes it up there, they're going to be able to make it there. The first iteration of this map had barnacles on the ceiling. There was about 6 or 7 of them just hanging down all the way here, basically. And I wanted them to be there, so when the player gets up onto that platform and walks along this pipe, there's a bit of risk for them. But the majority of playtesters in the first couple of phases came into this room, looked at the barnacles, walked up to the barnacles, a barnacle would start lifting them up. They'd hit the barnacle or shoot the barnacle and fall on, and then the player would fall onto this pipe and continue on their merry way. And it's got me thinking, if there's a solution to the puzzle that isn't the right solution, but is easier than solving the puzzle that's been designed, then players are probably going to do it. So even though barnacles are a danger, they're not that much of a danger, and they can be utilised to get up. It's like, that's perfect. So I found a lot of people were doing that, and as much as I like multiple ways of doing things, people were getting confused and be like, oh, why were there just barnacles here? You know, what's going on? You just put barnacles, that's such a lazy way of designing it. And I'm like, no, it's an actual puzzle, but everyone just used the barnacles. So I took them out, and the player has to solve it. And obviously, the real solution to the puzzles behind the player as they walk into the room, I wanted the player to search around to see these lights to show this is where to go, and then the player would look for it. Now, if you heard there, I added in a creaking sound to show that this board is here to acknowledge it, because quite a lot of players I saw were going back and getting props, so getting barrels and stuff, putting the barrels here and then jumping on the barrels, and I guess it's my fault for not making the wood, you know, like a normal wood texture, if you know what I mean, or one that looks like it could be broken. But all you have to do is hit it like that, it breaks and then it drops. And this is similar to I had a puzzle in NostalgiaVille Cosmonaut's first map, which I actually removed by the time, you know, I submitted NostalgiaVille Cosmonaut, but it was this basically, so I've just kind of reused the puzzle. And then it's, yeah, that's you up. You can get up here. Now we're in the train yard. As you see to the right, I've put a hint there to, you know, zoom view, because I want the player to be aware that they can have a look, and that's why I've used this really bright bluish light to highlight that part of the train yard. If you look around, there's not very, you know, there's no brightness, there's nothing that's bright until you look over here. It's like, it's the brightest part of the yard, it's drawing your attention. These citizens have been captured by the Metro Cops. There's a Metro Cop up there, and apparently the thing's going backwards. I don't know why that is. Anyway, the scanner was being a bit weird. So yeah, this is the middle of the train yard. This is your objective, or the core, or the kind of, yeah, the main goal. And then obviously, as we saw in NostalgiaVille Cosmonaut, it's a simple climb up here. And the reason why it's up there, not just a simple staircase, is because I wanted the player looking out here initially, and now even more so in normal Cosmonaut. It's good to have that, so. And this train was conveniently placed initially for NostalgiaVille Cosmonaut when you had a battle here, but I still think it's really good to include dynamically changing environments. And this is good because we could have just walked across there straight towards the battle, but now we're here, we've now been cut off and we've got to find a way around. So we can either, you know, crawl under here, or we can, you know, go over here. And there's stuff to find in here to help with the upcoming battle for those people who are on hard mode. I put this train coming across just to make it feel like an actual train yard, and you can use this train when you take on the battle to, I guess, if you can maybe shoot the Combine soldiers first and then take cover behind that train for a bit. And that train only happens once. That train only happens once. I was going to have a reoccurring train, but I decided against it. This part was designed as a, I don't want to say stealth, but as the player, you get to decide when this battle begins. You get to decide when to initiate the battle. They're not going to notice you, so obviously in like a real environment, they would have seen me 100% or heard me or something like that. But in this scenario, you get to decide, and you also get to decide how you want to do it. Do you want to take out one cop and run? Do you want to try and throw a grenade in? Do you want to just sneak up and hit them with a crowbar? It's entirely up to the player. These guys will not move unless it's glitched. These guys will not, move. So you can, find all the Easter eggs I've placed around this area. And you can even make it quite close. And these guys make a loud cheering sound just because I kind of want them to acknowledge that they're safe, and then they start running about like crazy. One of the ideas was that we'd have one of them running onto a track and a train would come and all that, and I wish I'd done that. That would have been funny, and it would have kept in line with the kind of hilarious theme of citizens getting brutally murdered, but I didn't do that, so they just kind of stand there and awkwardly look at you. I'll just get this gun, which is hidden down here. Yeah, and that's it. So that's the liberation. It's not very exciting. If I had more willpower to work on the project, I would have added voice lines and them congratulating you, and maybe some of them would, say more nice things. If you walk in here, they kind of speak.
You smell that? It's freedom.
And all of this was part of a bigger story arc, so the very first iteration of Cosmonaut, there was a team of people who you were going to the rocket with, so it wasn't just you. There was actually, another cosmonaut. It was going to be a Russian woman who was going to accompany you with a team of, citizens across to the rocket so you can escape planet Earth together or something like that. But, all of these characters got taken out, but the kind of story still remains, so that's why it's a bit weird. And this area, I didn't like this area, so I just blocked it up so you can't now just walk in there unless you pile up, but there's nothing interesting to see. And that's it for the Arge. That's the liberation. It's very underwhelming, and it's something I wish I had built upon. These guys are supposed to have a script where they walk out here, but it didn't seem to work, and I couldn't be bothered fixing it because I'm not a fan of scripting in Half-Life 2 or Hammer. So now we're going to walk up the top. And I placed this barrel here to stop the player from just running straight forward, so they can actually take in the surroundings. There we go. We have another citizen being brutally murdered. And, it's a bit weird. It's like, well, why was she here? Why was she not down there in the trains? And I don't know. Maybe she escaped. I kind of tried to give a few clues that she'd maybe escaped and she'd used this pipe to bash these guys or whatever. I don't know, but she was only there as the teaching mechanic for the sniper to show, similar to the turrets in this chapter, I needed some way of showing that the sniper was there to stop the player from just walking out and getting hit immediately. So that was that basically. So now we know that there's a sniper up there. We get into the finale battle that's been revamped. Now, if you've played NostalgiaVille Cosmonaut, you'll know that the battle I designed for this was one of the greatest battles ever made for Half-Life 2. Of course, I am joking. It was one of the... In fact, it was probably one of the worst final battles I've seen in a mapping challenge, in a Ville contest. And I made it, so I had to revamp it. So I did away with all NPCs, all ties, all manhacks to the final battle of NostalgiaVille Cosmonaut, and I made it completely different. So this sniper battle's not that difficult. You can actually not be seen at the start. So I wanted the player to be in danger at some point. I didn't want it where the player could walk right or get to the end without being seen. There's parts of this battle where the player has to put themselves in danger, but at the start you can pretty much get past the sniper without being seen, and it gets you to your first point, which is, you know, this part here. And I added this ramp so to kind of show the player that they can go there. There's nothing to be seen over there. There used to be, but I removed it. And, you know, the player can hide behind there. So now we get to the first point where we actually have to, you know, make a move. We've got to get out of cover and be seen. And it's not that difficult, you know, it's a easy run. We could do this 100 times and not be hit. I said that in hope that I would be hit and it would be hilarious, but not. And then we get here and then it's like, well, the next area we had to go had to be as clear as possible. So obviously I've got that area, which I'll talk about in a minute. I put the hint saying get ammo from crate just so the player knows, and then at this point the player can throw the grenade, and that's got to be one of the first times I've got it first time. And yeah, the player could have gone back here and maybe thrown it or tried if they wanted to make it closer, but a lot of these props were placed here so the player doesn't just run straight up here. One thing I didn't want the player doing is getting to this area and seeing this generator and trying to go to the generator to start the generator while they were still under fire. So I've blocked up the generator with this kind of structure, and the player can only access it through here. So if the player makes it to here and they're still being assaulted, it's, you know, it's their fault. They have actively gone in the line of fire and they're probably going to die. But and that's partially why I broke up the generator as well, so there's no handle on it. You've got to go find that. I've made it as clear as possible so that you can see. I'm not sure if you can see it from, you know, a way back at the start. I think I deliberately, if I remember correctly, I deliberately made it hidden so you didn't just see it, and you actually had to. I guess that's what these boxes were for. It's been a while. So I hung it on this rope to make it obvious for when you're here. So once you're here, you can see it, and you may think, why is that hanging on the rope? And like most of the things in this mod, I have no idea why it's hanging on a rope. I don't know who put it there in the context of, you know, the environment. I don't know why it's just dangling there. It just is. And then you can pick it up and put it on the generator. I removed all the citizens because the sniper would continually fire at them instead of the player. And even when I put an AI relationship, it's, you know, it's still fire at the citizens, so it became kind of annoying. So I just removed them as soon as you walk into that building there. In the first kind of draft of this map, I guess, there was an APC that would come out onto the bridge when you started the generator, and then I kind of thought, well, that's very close to the final battle, and I didn't want players to have any memories of that final battle where they're standing here with the turret guns or whatever you call them and the machine guns and firing down. I didn't want any of that, so I kind of took the APC out and added in a few combine soldiers, removed that fence, but that was still very annoying. So it wasn't that long ago I removed them before release, but now all you've got to do is open the door and it just opens, and that's it. So there's nothing else happens. It's quite mundane, but probably for the best. And then in true Half-Life fashion, the generator explodes and the door closes behind you, making sure you can't go back. It's like, that's the end of Act 1. That's the final, you know, arena. Basically, that's what I'm trying to tell the player. So now that we're inside this building, one thing that I forgot to mention was you can see the hospital from here, and this was here in NostalgiaVille, Cosmonaut. And I thought, well, that'd be a good setting for the next map. So it's clearly there, and I like the fact you enter from over here, and you can see it, and it's in full view. So now you're in this building. I'm not quite sure what the building's supposed to be, but here it is. This was one of the final parts of the mod to get finished. It was also the first room I made. So on the very first day that I said I'm going to redo NostalgiaVille Cosmonaut, or I'm just going to make it into a full mod, I made this room, and it looked very different, and it didn't have the electricity puzzle in it. It was just, it's like it has the room but without the electricity, and each playtester said, oh, this room looks really cool, but it'd be better if there was something to do in here. And I had an electricity puzzle, or an electricity distraction obstruction in a map that I'd cut from Cosmonaut, so I decided to kind of put the electricity in here, and it's one of these things you've kind of got to look around, and I added in a light to highlight that this area exists. You can drop down onto the wood, because obviously it's wood, it's not going to get electrified. I wish I had put something to work out, a puzzle here. But this was done very late on, and by the time I got to this, I had really lost interest with the project. So that's why I just made it a lever. And that's it. Now you can get past the Barnacles. The Barnacles, again, serve as a distraction. They're not dangerous. They're not, they're not going to cause you too much harm, unless you try and jump when they're there and the electricity's happening. I also had to remember to add a ladder here, because initially the player could drop down here, when I designed it a few weeks ago, and they couldn't get back up again, so it became kind of awkward. And that is the end of episode 3 of my Cosmonaut developer commentary. In the next episodes, we'll have a look at the start of Act 2 and how I tried creating an atmosphere of a location using various techniques. So, I hope to see you then. Thanks for watching.